Alright, Shalom, Shalom. This is the brother Abaka Allah Awalam, trying to put this lesson together to edify the body of the Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai. I got a video here that basically tells about how slavery was in um can't think of the European country right now, but it is said, it is explaining in the video. Um, just to let our people know, particular people know, that they are the people, the chosen people of the Bible, the chosen people of Yahweh, which the world ignorantly know as God. You know, just to share this info, I'm gonna let the video go ahead and stream, go ahead and play.
Historic look back in time that you may not expect to find in Medford.
It was owned by Isaac Royal Sr., and then his son Isaac Royal Jr. inherited it. And they, at one point, were the largest slave holders in Massachusetts.
Penny Outlaw is co-president of the Royal House Association. She says this is the only preserved structure of its kind in New England.
It is unique. As far as we know, it's the only extant, still standing slave quarters.
Nearly 3 centuries ago, these quarters in the mansion just 35 feet away stood on a 550-acre estate, 11 times the size of the Boston Common.
On the side of the mansion that is facing the slave quarters, the only windows are windows that light the slave's stairway, and they have to be there to provide some light. When you look at the rest of the mansion, there are loads of windows. So that was obviously a very deliberate choice that was made. When you look at the side of the slave quarters that faces the mansion, lots of windows. So it really makes a statement about who is seen and who is not, and who controls that.
Inside, the slave quarters are markedly modest. There's an out kitchen designed to keep the summer heat and the year-round smell of food away from the mansion. Next to that, a meeting room that used to be divided into 3 smaller rooms.
There was no historical value of this structure until relatively recently, because there was no value for the slaves' lives even after they were long gone. So you'll see that this has been improved. It has heat, it has bathrooms. It certainly wasn't like this to begin with. It was a very bare bones series of 3 rooms where we know people slept, but we also know a lot of goods and other things were kept here.
Next door tells a much different story.
You'll see a lot of things that indicate wealth, and he's trying to make it as grand as you can for a mansion at the time.
Isaac Royal Sr. grew up in Dorchester and acquired his wealth after becoming a merchant mariner and establishing a sugarcane plantation in Antigua. He eventually returned to the colonies and this manse.
This is a new part of the house, so he added this onto the original brick cottage, and he was able to raise the ceiling by about a foot. He wants it to be as grand as possible. He is really wealthy, so he doesn't care that the heat rises, and much of the heat would be up here, because he is enslaving people who are keeping the fireplaces going 24 hours a day, probably 7-8 months of the year.
Upstairs, the bedroom for the slave owners, dubbed the Marble Chamber.
See, she said that the lady explained that the slaves, they was gonna be basically making a fire, 24/7, doing the work, putting firewood in the fireplace, constantly, it didn't matter if the heat was rising or whatever, they basically, expendable. The slaves was expendable, and they can do whatever, as they will with their slaves. Go, they was just property to them, let the video continue. And plus, she was saying about the living quarters, it was basically bare. You know, there was nothing in there. There was nothing in the quarters really. Just bare walls, a bare frame, and floors. Just floors are more likely, and the slaves were, that's how the slaves lived. Letting the video continue on play.
Stands in sharp contrast to the sleeping arrangements for the slaves in the kitchen chamber.
We have examples of what's known as slave cloth in the mansion, and we're contrasting that with the type of sort of taffeta and silk that the royals would have been wearing. The point being, the taffeta and silk rustles when you walk. It announces that you're coming. The slave cloth doesn't make a sound, and that's very deliberate because you're basically a non-person.
What's known about the lives of the 60 slaves here falls devastating.
And she said that basically the slaves were non-persons. They were seen as just less than human and just property. Basically, that's what she was saying. Basically, just want to point that out.
Short of the detailed royal family history.
Because they were considered property, they didn't have last names. So when you're looking at doing, what a lot of people do, a lot of genealogical research now, it's hard to get past what I call the wall of 1870. That's the first census where African American people were recorded as people.
The Royal House Association is hoping to find funding for more research about the people who were enslaved here.
Where we are on a number of fronts in terms of racial disparities, still in employment, still in homelessness. In almost every other category, people of African descent, and even broader than that, brown people do not have the same opportunity yet in America as white people. And you can trace the root of that right back to enslavement.
Preserve.
You see what she said? She said even to this day, who the people are basically the homeless, the ones that's in need. And you know what I'm saying? It's basically that for the most, generally speaking, they're a particular race of people. It also applies to all the tribes. The so-called Africans or African Americans, so-called blacks, the so-called Latinos, and the so-called Native Americans. It applies to all 12 tribes. The powers that be that try to make a distinction or separation. That's all who they are. A deception of trying to separate separate the people from who they really are. That's part of their deception, to keep the true identities of who the true people of the Most High, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, and them themselves, to keep their identity hidden. That's why they're today, especially over here in America. You'll call bywords, which is basically that was prophesied as a curse. We'll be called by words in the proverb. And that's part of that grand deception. That's why, like I was saying, trying to get to say, that's the reason why today we are called black or African American. At one point you was called a Negro. You was called Afro Americans. We call ourselves Afro Americans and things like that, which are just bywords. And that's why the so-called people that that's in power. That's why they changed that. I tried to hide who they are according to the Bible, according to who they really are, is hidden from knowing from. It's hidden basically because that's what they do. They're liars and deceivers. That's part of who they are. The devil. The devil that the Bible speaks of. I'm gonna let the video finish out. Yeah, Yahweh willing, I'm gonna get to some scriptures afterwards.
And propaganda. navigating that history, key to appreciating what has changed and what has not.
I think it's important to understand the past in order to understand where we are now.
And really the history of the royal family, very detailed, but very little known about their slaves.
Yeah, and the Royal House Association has added for research so they can learn more about the 60 slaves that the royal family owned over all those years.
All right, up next, photographs get personal.
Well, yeah, that's the end of that video. Basically, you see, the people that were slaves, considered they was just what they were, property. They wasn't even recognized as people until a certain period of time. I think 18 something. The lady was saying, I don't know the correct date. So they was expendable. They were basically disposable. That's how they treated people, human beings, less than what they were. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna get to some scriptures to show you in the scriptures that this happened to a particular people only. You know what I'm saying? This is Deuteronomy 28. I'm gonna get to chapter. I'm gonna start at chapter verse 58. This is commandment of Yahweh. He said, if thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, Yahweh, thy power. Then continuing to 59, then Yahweh will make thy plagues wonderful in the plagues of thy seas, even great plagues and of long continuous and sore sickness and long sickness of long continuance. I'm gonna jump down to verse 64, and it reads and Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. You see that's what he was saying. Continuously they have slaves. Making the fire on a continuously. Someone was the slave would be there, making sure the fire was kept going. The fire kept going in the fireplace. That's for an example. But Yahweh shall give thee there a trembling heart, failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind, and thy life, Salakia, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, with God it were evening, and at evening thou shalt say, with God it were morning, for the fear of thy heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thy eyes which thou shalt see. And getting to the point of slavery, who was brought over here, it's well documented in history that there was people, a particular people brought over here through slave ships. There's a transatlantic slave trade, plus there was trans-Pacific slave trade, which basically consisted of the northern tribes, the 10 tribes, the 10 tribes, and continuing with verse 68, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way thereof I speak unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. You know, that lets you know these people that were sold to you are your enemies to this day, you know. And the word buy, where it says no man shall buy you, basically it means redeem. Basically, no man can get you out of the situation. No man can get you out. Only one, Yahweh Shai Salakia, when he comes, you know, through the blood, the shedding of his blood on the cross, you know. He's the only one that's going to redeem us, you know. He's the only one that can get us out of the situation that was placed upon us through Yahweh, that Yahweh put us in, you know, for our disobedience. But to this word Egypt, I'm gonna let show you through the scriptures that Egypt just means house of bondage. You know, it's Exodus 20:2. I am Yahweh thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You see that's all it means. Egypt means house of bondage. In America today, this is the spiritual called Egypt. You know what I'm saying? Because we was brought over here in bondage. And we are still in bondage to this day. You know, I just want to share this video insight, you know, to edify the body, you know. I'm giving all the praise and glory and honor to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, and double honors to the apostles that I learned the truth from. This truth, there's only one faith, you know, one baptism. There's only one faith, one faith, one baptism. You know, so I messed that up. So I'm gonna try to find it real quick. Uh, that lets you know the truth there's only one truth. There's no different forms of the truth, or there's no variance. It's only one truth. You know, from from Genesis to Revelation. You know, it's only one. There's only one faith. There's no variance. There's no believing these different denominations and this, that, and the third. They believe something different. They believe differently. That's not of the real scriptures. That's not truth. This Ephesians 4:5 says one Lord, which is Yahweh, one faith, which is the truth, and one baptism, which is the baptism of being baptized in the Word, you know, or Yahweh Shai, you know. There's only one faith, basically. This Word is only one. There's no variance, you know. I just pray that the body was edified, and I'm in this video, and to all the Akim and the Aqua, you know, I'm gonna say to y'all Shalom, and also Wa Abba Babal.